Hey, real quick. Before we get into this, I want you to think about last Friday. Maybe you had a long week. Work was stressful, your boss was being difficult, traffic was terrible, and by Thursday night, you were done. So Friday rolls around and you think, you know what? I deserve this. I've been working hard. I'm going to grab that $7 coffee. Maybe pick up that shirt I've been eyeing. Order dinner instead of cooking. Watch a movie on the couch with some delivery food, and honestly, it felt great. Now, here's my question. How often does that happen? Once a week? Twice? Every time something stressful happens? Because here's the thing, and I say this as someone who has absolutely done this, that feeling of, I deserve this, might be the single most expensive feeling in your financial life. Not your rent, not your car payment, not even your student loans. That feeling. Today, we're going to talk about something the personal finance world doesn't discuss enough. Not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable. We're going to talk about how the habit of treating yourself, when left unchecked, quietly builds a wall between you and real financial freedom. And I'm going to show you the math, the psychology, and, most importantly, what to actually do about it. Let's get into it.
If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe now.
So let's start with some context, because this isn't just a personal habit problem. It's a cultural one. The phrase, treat yourself, went from a joke on a TV show to a full-blown economic movement. And companies love it. The global self-care market, which includes everything from premium coffee to spa days to luxury skincare, was valued at $1.8 trillion in 2024. Trillion, with a T, and look, I'm not here to tell you that taking care of yourself is wrong. That's not the point. The point is that corporations figured out something incredibly powerful about human psychology. If they can attach their product to the idea of self-worth and reward, you'll buy it without even thinking. Think about how Starbucks markets their seasonal drinks. It's never, here's a coffee. It's, you deserve a little magic this season. Think about how fashion brands run sales. Treat yourself. You've earned it. Even credit card companies do this. You work hard. Reward yourself with points. They're not selling a product. They're selling you permission. And here's where it gets interesting from a financial perspective. A study from psychological science found that people who feel stressed or emotionally depleted make significantly more impulsive purchases. They found that emotional fatigue directly increases spending. Not because people are stupid, but because self-control is a mental resource, and when that resource is drained, the brain looks for immediate relief. So you're not weak for doing this. You're human. But being human with an unlimited credit card and a phone full of shopping apps is a combination that can absolutely wreck your finances. All right, let's do some math. And I promise this is the good kind. The kind that makes you rethink things. Let me introduce you to a totally fictional person. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah makes $55,000 a year, which is pretty close to the median individual income in the United States. After taxes, she's bringing home around $3,600 a month. Sarah doesn't think she has a spending problem. She doesn't go on extravagant vacations. She doesn't drive a luxury car. She's not buying Gucci bags. She's just treating herself. Reasonably, like most people do. Here's what that looks like in a typical month. A nicer coffee, 4 days a week instead of making it at home. $28. Ordering food on weekends because she earned a break from cooking. $120 an impulse online purchase, maybe clothes, maybe home decor, maybe both. $85 I've had a rough week streaming service upgrade or app purchase. $20. A little splurge at the grocery store, fancy snacks, premium brands, $45, that's $298 a month. Sarah probably thinks of that as nothing. Rounding errors. Life expenses. But here's where it gets painful. $298 a month. Invested at a 7% annual return, which is the historical average of a basic S&P 500 index fund, over 30 years becomes $364,000. Let me say that again. $364,000. Not from a big salary. Not from a tech job or business. From the cost of treating yourself. That's money that evaporates quietly in $7 and $12 and $30 increments every single month, and the worst part, Sarah doesn't feel like she's spending $298. She feels like she's taking care of herself. She feels like she earned it. Now here's what most people miss at this point. The problem isn't the $298. The problem is the pattern. Because Sarah's not just spending $298 this month, she spent it last month, and the month before that, and she'll spend it next month. And because it's framed as a reward, it never gets questioned. It never gets cut. It just continues. All right, let's do some math. And I promise this is the good kind. The kind that makes you rethink things. Let me introduce you to a totally fictional person. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah makes $55,000 a year, which is pretty close to the median individual income in the United States. After taxes, she's bringing home around $3,600 a month. Sarah doesn't think she has a spending problem. She doesn't go on extravagant vacations. She doesn't drive a luxury car. She's not buying Gucci bags. She's just treating herself. Reasonably, like most people do. Here's what that looks like in a typical month. A nicer coffee, 4 days a week instead of making it at home. $28. Ordering food on weekends because she earned a break from cooking. $120 an impulse online purchase. Maybe clothes, maybe home decor, maybe both. $85. I've had a rough week streaming service upgrade or app purchase. $20. A little splurge at the grocery store. Fancy snacks. Premium brands, $45, that's $298 a month. Sarah probably thinks of that as nothing. Rounding errors. Life expenses. But here's where it gets painful. $298 a month. Invested at a 7% annual return, which is the historical average of a basic S&P 500 index fund. Over 30 years becomes $364,000. Let me say that again. $364,000. Not from a big salary. Not from a tech job or business. From the cost of treating yourself. That's money that evaporates quietly in $7 and $12 and $30 increments every single month, and the worst part, Sarah doesn't feel like she's spending $298. She feels like she's taking care of herself. She feels like she earned it. Now here's what most people miss at this point. The problem isn't the $298. The problem is the pattern. Because Sarah's not just spending $298 this month. She spent it last month, and the month before that, and she'll spend it next month. And because it's framed as a reward, it never gets questioned. It never gets cut. It just continues. Okay, so now let's talk about why this is so hard to break. Because if it were just about math, you'd have stopped after that last section. But spending isn't really about math, is it? It's about emotion. Here's the loop most people are stuck in, and tell me if this sounds familiar. You work hard, you feel stressed or depleted. You treat yourself as a reward. You feel temporary relief. You go back to work. Repeat. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. It basically means that anything pleasurable you do repeatedly stops giving you the same hit of satisfaction. The first fancy coffee felt amazing. The 50th one barely registers. But you're still buying it because now it's part of the routine. Now it's just what you do. And here's the cruel twist. Because the pleasure fades over time, you often have to spend more to get the same feeling. The $7 coffee becomes a $12 drink with add-ons. The occasional dinner out becomes every Friday and Saturday. The budget shopping becomes, I deserve the nicer version. This is called the hedonic treadmill. You're running harder just to stay in the same place emotionally. Now, I want to address something here, because I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, okay, but I work really hard. Am I supposed to just never enjoy my money? That sounds miserable, and that's a completely fair pushback. Absolutely valid. But here's the distinction that changes everything. There's a massive difference between intentional enjoyment and emotional spending. Intentional enjoyment is when you plan it, you value it, and you feel genuinely good about it after. Like, you save up and take a trip you've been looking forward to for months. That experience has real value. It probably gives you lasting memories. Emotional spending is reactive. It's the Friday night impulse buy. It's the I deserve this that happens because you're tired or frustrated or bored. And research consistently shows that this kind of purchase provides very short-term satisfaction, and sometimes even regret shortly after. A study from the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that unplanned, emotion-driven purchases lead to negative emotions about 50% of the time within 24 hours. So you're not even getting a good deal on the happiness. You're paying full retail price for half a day of feeling okay. Here's something most people never think about. And this one genuinely surprised me when I first ran the numbers. Every dollar you spend on emotional purchases doesn't just cost you $1. It costs you several dollars, because of something called the opportunity cost multiplier. Think about it this way. That $85 impulse clothing purchase, the one that felt like a treat, you didn't just spend $85. If that money had been invested, over 10 years at 7%, it would have been worth about $167. Over 20 years, $329. Over 30 years, $647. So the real price tag of that shirt wasn't $85. The real price tag was the $647 you'll never have in retirement. Now multiply that by every small treat you buy in a month, every food delivery, every app subscription you barely use, every it was only $20 purchase. Suddenly, the numbers get very, very real. And here's the thing that makes this even harder to face. Because these purchases are small, they feel harmless. Our brains are actually wired to feel more pain from one big loss than from multiple small ones. Psychologists call this pain of paying fragmentation. You think twice about spending $300 all at once. But $20 here, $40 there, $30 somewhere else? That barely registers. Until you add it up. Let me give you a concrete example. If you were handing someone a $300 bill every month for the privilege of feeling slightly less stressed in the moment, you'd probably say no. But that's essentially what's happening in slow motion. The size of the transaction is disguising the true cost. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about what this pattern actually costs you, not just in dollars, but in options. Because here's the real damage of the treat-yourself cycle. It doesn't just take money. It takes choices. When you're 45 and your job becomes unbearable, the ability to walk away from it requires savings. When a health emergency hits, the ability to handle it without going into debt requires savings. When an opportunity comes up, a business idea, a chance to invest, a career pivot, the ability to take it requires savings. Every month you spend that $298 on emotional purchases. You are slowly, quietly trading future options for present comfort. And the insidious thing is that the comfort is temporary. But the lost options are permanent. There's a concept in financial psychology called future self-disconnection. Research by Hal Hirschfield at UCLA found that most people's brains literally experience their future self as a stranger, almost like a different person. When you imagine yourself at 65, your brain doesn't fire up the same neural patterns as when you think about yourself today. So, when you choose the $7 coffee over saving that $7, you're not actually choosing present you over future you. You're choosing present you over a stranger. And we are, evolutionarily, wired to care way more about ourselves than strangers. Understanding this is actually one of the most powerful things you can do for your financial life. Because once you know about this bias, you can start to fight it. Okay, so we've established the problem. Let's talk about what you actually do about it. And I want to be very clear here. I'm not going to tell you to stop enjoying your life. That's not realistic, it's not sustainable, and honestly, it's just bad advice. Here's what I actually recommend. And it comes down to 3 shifts. Shift number 1. Replace reactive rewards with planned ones. Instead of treating yourself whenever the impulse strikes, schedule your treats. Pick one day a week, maybe Friday, and give yourself a real budget for enjoyment. $40, $60, whatever works for your income. Spend it however you want, guilt-free on that day. What this does is incredible. It keeps the pleasure of treating yourself while removing the reflex spending that happens the other 6 days. Most people find they spend 40 to 50% less just by doing this. Shift number 2. Build a freedom fund, not just an emergency fund. Most financial advice says save 3 to 6 months of expenses.
You see this?
Great,
Fiat
do that.
currency.
But
It
also
loses
build a
value
separate
every
account
day.
that I call a
But
freedom fund.
This is the
Money
future of
specifically
money.
earmarked for options. This is the I could quit my job if I needed to money. The I could take this opportunity money. When your treats are competing against a savings goal that represents real freedom, something shifts in your brain. Suddenly, the $85 impulse buy isn't competing against a vague future. It's competing against your ability to walk away from a bad situation. That makes the choice much easier. Shift number 3. Audit your last 30 days. Go into your bank account or credit card app right now and look at the last 30 days. Categorize every single transaction. Not to judge yourself, just to see. Because most people have absolutely no idea what they're spending on impulse purchases until they look. When you see it written out, the food deliveries, the random purchases, the subscriptions, it becomes real in a way that your vague sense of, I spend a bit on treats, just can't match. Knowledge is the starting point. And here's the last thing I'll say on this. Automating your savings before you can spend the money is the single most effective financial habit I know of. Pay yourself first. Set up an automatic transfer on payday, even if it's just $50 or $100. That goes straight to savings or investments. Then spend what's left. When you do it the other way around, spend first, save what's left, there's almost never anything left. But when you save first, you adapt. Humans are incredibly adaptive. You'll figure out how to live on what remains, and future, you will be wealthy for it. Look, I want to leave you with this. There's nothing wrong with enjoying your money. That's literally what it's for. But there's a difference between enjoying your money intentionally, as a choice you made with a clear head, and spending it reactively, as a response to stress, boredom, or the feeling that you deserve it just for surviving the week. The goal isn't to feel guilty about every coffee. The goal is to make sure that in 15 or 20 years you still have choices, that you're not trapped in a job you hate, or one medical bill away from crisis, or wondering where all your money went. Because here's the truth. The version of you that treats yourself thoughtfully and saves consistently, that person isn't depriving themselves. That person is quietly building something. And one day, not as far from now as you think, they're going to have options that most people never get. That's the real treat. If this video made you think differently about how you spend, even a little, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because we're going to keep doing exactly this, breaking down the math and the psychology of money in a way that actually makes sense. I'll see you in the next one.